Hey everyone, so today is kind of a rainy, cold, miserable day here near the park, so there's not much for photography. It's just one of those days where you get a fire going, stay in the cabin, kind of warm up. So I thought after using the GFX 100S for a few days, I would kind of talk about the things that I like about the camera, the things that I dislike about it, and overall feeling after using it for a week time, kind of going over it. So just to be clear, this camera, I got it as a demo for 7 days. If you are interested in purchasing the GFX 100S, they have a program. You can apply online and kind of get the camera for 7 days to kind of try it. If you want to buy it, there's definitely no prerequisite to buy it to be enrolled in the program. But I wanted to try it out because this is a camera that I'm kind of really interested in making the upgrade from my Sony a7R IV to this camera. But in order to do that, it's a big financial investment, so I wanted to be sure, kind of using it in the field. And I've been shooting with it every day, kind of just getting the feel for it. And right off the bat, I'm going to start off with the things that I do like about this camera. I found the menu system really easy to navigate. Coming from the Sony, I kind of know what I want in terms of settings for landscape photography, and I can easily find it in this camera and set it up how I like it without even checking the manual. So that was, for me, a nice thing to mention is the fact that it's easy to navigate the menu and find everything you need. And if you weren't, it's not like these days it's really hard. You can watch a lot of YouTube videos about it and learn everything you need. So the camera that I got, just to kind of be sharing with you guys, I got it with a 23mm Fujifilm GF lens and a 100 to 200 Fujifilm GF lens too. So I got a prime lens, 23mm f4, and the 100 to 400 at f5.6, and both lenses, I can say after using them, the quality is really nice on these lenses. They're really high quality lenses, and I quite enjoyed shooting with both of them, although I did use the telephoto a lot more. But one thing, like coming from the Sony, I've been using it for a while, is the Sony, I don't have a 100 to 200, I have a 100 to 400. So I find in some situation I want it to be closer. I do like sometimes shooting at 400mm or really tighter. So I find that with this kind of lens, it is limiting at 200mm, and I don't think Fujifilm have a 400mm equivalent yet, but I'm sure down the line they're going to develop it. But I found myself wanting to be closer in some situations, and I felt like it was kind of restrictive. But I only had it for a week. I'm not complaining about this. And definitely I would like to have a wider lens than 23mm, because with the Sony 2 coming from using the 16 to 35mm on the Sony lens, on the Sony camera, sorry, I sometimes shoot a lot at 16, so I like to have a really wide lens. But it's been kind of fun also shooting with a 23mm prime, something that I've never shot with before. So like I said, both lenses, I have no complaints about them. The quality is really nice. What's nice about this 100 to 200 that I have here is that it's very light lens. It seems solid, but it's not too heavy in terms of weight. When I get to the 23mm, it is a bit more hefty lens, hefty piece of glass, but it feels nice. You know, it doesn't feel like it's too heavy, but it is heavier than the 100 to 200. And with the camera too, the camera kind of grips nice with the grip. I quite like that a lot, that it feels solid in the hand. And being a medium format camera, when I took this out of the box and kind of opening it up for the first time, I can feel the heftiness of it. It feels really grounded. It feels nice in the hand and doesn't feel like something flimsy light that you can just kind of toss around. I always used to look at my Sony a7R IV as a really nice camera, feeling really hefty, really nice. But when I took this one out and kind of touch it with my hand, I can feel the weight of it. It feels nice, actually. I'm not complaining about the weight. It's not too heavy. And I like the design of it. It feels kind of nice in the hand. And you can tell that it's a medium format camera because it does have that factor. It does look like it can actually eat the Sony for lunch. When you have this side by side with the Sony a7R IV, it feels like this one's gonna have the Sony for lunch. So yeah, I definitely feel like really you're getting what you pay for in terms of heftiness. And it reminds me of the DSLR days when you used to have a big body, and when you kind of took it out of the bag, it felt serious, not just a piece of kit. I'm nowhere saying that the Sony is not a professional camera. I love my Sony a7R4, but this one, it does feel quite nice in the hand. Feels kind of hefty and grounded, and I like the weight of it. So definitely, like, it's not a fast camera to shoot for wildlife or anything, but for landscape, I quite like it. So the other thing, after kind of going through a few days taking pictures with this camera that I quite like about it, I find that the pictures themselves have a really nice quality to it. Like, the colors are really, really nice. They're coming out of the camera. It has a nice quality to the images, and I quite like the resolution, and it's very, very sharp. Like, when you focus on something and you zoom in, the amount of detail in the files and the images, I was blown away by that. It makes me really want to get this camera, but I'll talk about whether I'm gonna buy this camera or not a little bit later. I guess some of the things that I didn't like about it is it's not much, actually. I mean, I find that it's really easy to use. You have everything you need. You know where everything is, and if you know how to use most cameras, all the features are pretty much titled the same way, so you can easily find everything you need. And it was easy to set up and everything. I guess the one thing that kind of found that could be a slight issue with this camera is not really a big deal. It's just something to look forward to, and a lot of people have talked about it. I've never shot medium format before, and when you do shoot medium format, you do have a shallower depth of field. So in some situations where I took one picture, I had to focus stack the shot, and I had to remember to focus stack it. Coming from using my full frame Sony a7R4, I never had an issue with having to focus stack a lot. I would just kind of always focus in one section and have front to back focus, and I found it did a good job. With this one, I noticed that in some situations where I focus, in some places the focus is shallow. So you have to keep that in mind shooting with this camera. And if you have to focus stack every single image from front to back, it can be a bit tedious, a bit like hard on the memory, because these are large files you're working with, but it's not too large compared to what the Sony was. So I don't feel like it's bad. It's just something that you have to consider when taking pictures of this one. And I find it really, really nice. I do like on this 23mm that when you switch your you can set your f-stop on the lens as a wheel, or you can set it to A here, and you can use it from the camera setting. And I quite like that feature, and it feels nice when you press it. It locks. You're not gonna easily kind of disengage it and not notice. And using this lens here, I quite like it, but I found in some cases, I don't know why it happened, the on button for the stabilizer, usually I have it on off, and I have the full coverage for the focus on the camera. There's two different switches here on the lens. I found something accidentally it got knocked over and it went to on, and I didn't notice. I don't know if it's just this lens, or it's just because it kind of sticks out a little bit, the buttons here. So maybe by kind of moving around, putting it in the back, taking it out of the back, switching, you can easily knock it over. So I kind of wish this was a bit more flush with the kind of the housing, and not so much sticking out, so you can at least don't accidentally knock it over not noticing. But it's just tiny stuff compared to the quality. I don't really have anything bad to say about this camera. So the question is now is, would I buy this camera? I guess I would say that using this camera after a week, yes, I really would like to buy this camera, but it would mean having to sell all my Sony gear and switching to the system altogether. And there's two things that I have to kind of be comfortable with if I do make the switch. Once I do, it definitely needs a bit of afterthought. One is the fact that the depth of field is shallow. I have to be kind of comfortable and fully understand the limitations of that. It's not really a big issue with medium format cameras. That's kind of how it is. And I don't have that much experience with medium format cameras, so I want to see, is this something that I could live by with? You kind of have to accept it and kind of use it and just be aware of that. So that's one thing. The other thing is I would like to have more lens options, maybe a wider lens than the 23mm, and maybe a more tighter lens like the 100 to 400 that I have in Sony. So would I make the switch right away? I don't think I will make it right away, but I will keep this in mind. Now that I've used it, I can see the quality is really, really nice. The image quality is amazing. I can't talk more about it. I love the feeling of the camera. I love everything about it. It feels really, really nice and solid in the hand. And the battery life, I didn't have an issue with the battery life. I found it really lasted all day shooting, but I would have to charge it at the end of the day. You also get 2 card slots, pretty much like my Sony a7R4, so you can shoot on both cards and have a backup in case something happens to one. So definitely, like, it's got everything I need. It's not really missing anything, and I quite like this camera. I can see why people are switching to it, and everybody I follow on YouTube has been using this camera more often, like Adam Gibbs, even Gavin Hardcastle, Mark Denny have been using this camera, and definitely I can see myself in the future switching to this body. I have nothing really bad to say. All the stuff I said is kind of minor issues, but I felt like I had to mention them just because, just kind of my experience. Obviously, like, a week time isn't not enough time to kind of fully grasp the system, but from what I could see so far and what I experienced so far, this was kind of it. Like, I find it really well built. So another thing that I quite like about this camera is that sometimes when you're shooting a long exposure photograph, you're limited with most cameras to 30 seconds and you switch to bulb. That's kind of been this way for years. But with this camera, I noticed when I was doing a 60-second or a minute long exposure, you do have a setting in the manual mode that you can actually go down to 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, I think even further, depending on what you need. So it's quite nice having increments that are more than 30 seconds, so you don't have to switch to bulb and time your shot and have it on quick release with a remote. So definitely having more options. I don't know why more camera manufacturers don't just update that limitation to 30 seconds. I have no idea why they're limited to 30 seconds. Maybe it's a limitation on the camera itself, and with medium format it changes. But I like having that feature. I find it really useful. It just makes your life a lot easier. Have the camera, have the timer kind of built in. You set it to the time that you want, and you just leave it exposing your long exposure photograph. So I quite like this feature about this camera. I had one slight issue with the camera kind of freezing while using it, and I would kind of turn it on, turn it off, and it would still show me the live view on the back of the camera. Even I'm moving around, I can see everything, but I couldn't take a picture, I couldn't change any of the settings, I couldn't touch any of the buttons. It was just kind of stuck, but not, it was off, but not off, which was kind of weird. And when I took out the battery and put it back in, it kind of reset to the setting that I like, but it kind of, and when I took out the battery and put it back in, it kind of reset and everything was fine. But I found that weird to begin with, that happened. I have no idea why that happened. So overall, yes, I would buy this camera. I'm really, really excited about it. I do like the 100 to 200 lens. I find it really, really nice. And yes, I know I complained about having not enough focal length to reach 400, but I guess with this camera and that quality, you can always crop in on your subject to kind of mimic the fact that you were closer if you want to isolate some stuff. So it's not the end of the world that there isn't no longer focal length than 200. I don't believe they have a 100 to 400 lens yet, but I'm sure they're gonna have it down the line, and it's not something I'm worried about. And having a wider lens, and definitely that's something that they would develop down the line too. But it would make me want to wait a little bit and see if they do that, just buy the lens that I want rather than buying the 23mm prime. But yeah, I can definitely see this camera in my future to kind of increase the quality of my photos. Also, like having my own landscape photography gallery for the past year and selling prints directly to the public. This camera kind of appeals to me because it means that I can print images in the sizes that I like, let's say 24 by 36 inch, without any interpolation, without any blowing up, and the quality will be really, really nice on those sizes. And I can print even bigger and have a really quality print to offer people. So having the best quality for photos definitely makes me, and a factor that I would consider when switching to this camera is to have absolutely the best files for prints. and to offer good quality photos for the people that I sell the work to. So definitely, like, I want to offer something of value, not just something quickly put together. Now, having said that, I'm not saying that the images coming out of the Sony a7R4 are horrible, they're not print worthy. The prints come out really, really nice too. And it's just saying that if I were to do an upgrade, it would just be from the Sony a7R4. This camera would be the next one for me to upgrade to. Well, I hope you guys found this useful. This was just my opinion about the camera after using it for a week. I'm no way sponsored by Fujifilm or paid to do this video. I just kind of wanted to share from my own thoughts on this camera after using it. And if you have any questions about the camera, I can probably answer it to the best of my ability. By the time you're seeing this video, I would have given it back to Fujifilm, so I won't have it anymore to test it out. But if something I experienced and you have something specific, leave me a comment if you have any questions about it, and I can answer it right away.